you ever felt.
Are you listening?
Breakthrough Media.
Their parents, and I have to just say that we have to think about this issue in terms of real people. A mother who pays a coyote to transport her child through their country of origin, through the entire country of Mexico, facing unknown peril, to come here. Why would that mother do that? I will tell you. Because she has decided for that child to remain where they are is worse. But what does Donald Trump do? He says, go back to where you came from. That is not reflective of our America and our values, and it's got to end.
Our message absolutely is don't send your children unaccompanied on trains or through a bunch of smugglers. We don't even know how many of these kids don't make it and may have been waylaid into sex trafficking or killed because they fell off a train. We have no way of tracking that. So that is our direct message to the families in Central America. Do not send your children to the borders. If they do make it, they'll get sent back. They'll get sent back. They'll get sent back.
But what does Donald Trump do? He says, go back to where you came from.
More importantly, they may not make it.
Now, you might remember the Democrats expressed no outrage over those comments. In fact, there was little outrage over the mass deportations under the Obama administration. Yeah, and we had those pictures that we showed you. The person that fixed it was Donald Trump. Remember the conditions under Obama? Migrant holding facilities? All under Obama. No anger when the Obama administration put immigrant children in cages. And fake moral outrage is the Democratic Party's favorite political weapon. We saw it over Russia and the collusion hoax. They called Trump a Russianaut, but even refused to acknowledge the role that Hillary Clinton's dirty, bought and paid for Russian dossier played in the election, played in the whole spying scandal of an opposition party candidate. And then, of course, a president-elect and a president. We saw it over the topic of obstruction of justice. They didn't care about what she did to those 33,000 subpoenaed emails. Democrats are now obsessed about phantom obstruction charges against the president with no underlying crime. And yet, when Hillary Clinton, bleach pit, acid wash, delete 33,000 emails, busting devices, hammers, removing SIM cards, not a peep from either the media mob or the Democratic Party. We see it on issues of racism and sexual assault. Don't forget the Democratic lieutenant governor and governor of Virginia. Yeah, they're still both in office. We see it on climate change. Four of the candidates on stage said that climate change was the biggest threat to our nation. One said Donald Trump. And I assume they all flew in a plane to last night's debate. I highly doubt that they took a Prius from the airport either. But if the Democratic Party's moral compass, Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez, gets her way, yeah, we're going to ban airplanes and cows and the combustion engine, and gas and oil, the lifeblood of our economy, are absolutely gone. You get the picture. Now, Ocasio-Cortez weighing in on the Democratic primary, and she's not happy with the current frontrunner. In fact, Ocasio-Cortez just trashed sleepy, creepy, crazy Uncle Joe Biden in an interview with Vogue, saying that the 76-year-old former VP would depress turnout and is not a pragmatic choice. I actually agree with her for once. Anyway, if Joe Biden's small, sad kickoff rally is any indication, voters are not excited. I don't see any excitement for any of these candidates.
Breakthrough Media.
Some people say that mass immigration into the United States can help reduce world poverty. Is that true? Well, no, it's not. And let me show you why. This gumball represents the 1 million legal immigrants that the United States has taken every year on average since 1990. Now, who in the world deserves our humanitarian compassion? The World Bank has one measure of the desperately poor of the world. They make less than $2 a day. And how many people make less than $2 a day in the world? Well, let's start with Africa. In Africa alone, there are 650 million people who make less than $2 a day. 650 million. And in India, another 890 million people, desperately poor. China adds another 480 million people. making less than $2 a day. And unfortunately, the rest of Asia has a heartbreaking 810 million people who the World Bank says make less than $2 a day. And finally, there's 105 million of Latin America's population that are desperately poor. All told, the World Bank says there are 3 billion people in the world, 3 billion people who are desperately poor, making less than $2 a day. That's 3,000 gumballs. And every year, we take 1 million and suggest that we've somehow made a humanitarian difference. Of course, we don't pull our immigrants from these desperately poor populations, do we? These people are too poor, too sick, too disconnected to make it here as immigrants. We tend to pull our immigrants out of the better off poor of the world. And Mexico tends to define the type of immigrant that we bring here because the plurality of people come from Mexico. And Mexico is poor. How many people in the world live in countries that have average incomes lower than that of Mexico? And the World Bank tells us that that number is these 3 billion plus another 2.6 billion people. 5.6 billion people in the world who live in countries with average incomes below that of Mexico. That's 5,600 gumballs. And so what is it that the elites are telling us? They're telling us that when we take this 1 million immigrants, that we somehow or another are tackling world poverty. And we have to do it regardless of the effect on our unemployed, the working poor, the most vulnerable members of our society, regardless of the effect on our natural resources. Even if we went by the most radical proposals in Washington, which are to actually double our immigration to 2 million a year, which would totally overwhelm our physical, natural, and social infrastructures, we couldn't make a noticeable difference. And we may be really hurting the impoverished people of the world because the million that we do take are among the most energetic, often the better educated, certainly the most dissatisfied people that if they did not immigrate would be the agents for change to improve the lot of all the people in these countries. The true heroes in the global humanitarian field are the people in these countries who have the wherewithal to immigrate to another country, but instead stay in their countries to apply their skills to help their fellow countrymen. Unfortunately, our immigration system tends to entice these very type of people to abandon their countrymen. The impossibility of making even a dent is actually worse than it looks here. Because last year, when we took 1 million immigrants, these countries added, births over deaths, 80 million more people into the impoverished populations. And this year, Congress is bringing in 1 million legal immigrants. And this year, according to the United Nations, these countries are expected to add another 80 million people. And next year, you can be quite sure that Congress, unless stopped by the American voters, will bring in another 1 million immigrants. And these countries, unfortunately, will be adding another 80 million people into these impoverished nations. We could take 5 million a year, but we'd never get ahead of what's happening in these countries. Not in this century. Don't you see? Immigration can never be an effective or significant way to deal with the suffering people of the world. They have to be helped where they live. 99.9% of them will never be able to immigrate to a rich country. There's no hope for that. They have to bloom where they're planted. The only place that 99.9% of these people can be helped is where they live. Let's help them there.
were drinking water out of the toilet. And that was them knowing a congressional visit was coming. This is CBP on their best behavior, telling people to drink out of the toilet.
Did you see somebody actually do that while you were
What you doing? I ain't buying it. Trump 2020. Hey, make America great again. Yeah.
Right now, we have people in Congress that hate our country. Right now, right now, we have people in Congress that hate our country.
Breakthrough